anybody who's just popping in, this is Emil. Emil, he's like one of the most remarkable, awesome people that I know working in DEI. You're in Copenhagen. This is right. This is where I ran into you. And you are, I love that you combine a lot of things. You combine not just, the DEI and organizational development and trying to get people to build better companies and such, but you also are an artist, you're a storyteller, you're an educator, you're a researcher. You have more slashes than a tire. This is great. So thank you for sharing your time and for being in my day and for bringing the joy on the gray kind of autumn days that we have. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And also thank you for sharing your time with me. It's like, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. But how are you? Because you didn't answer that one.
Oh, I didn't. Today I am tired. I'm not gonna lie. I'm actually, yes, if you see the bags under my eyes, I'm not packing for a trip. It is just kind of what it is. And I appreciate, when I get to talk to people who give energy, and that makes my day so much better. So thank you very much.
Nice. I'm so happy about that. Thank you.
But okay, I have to ask a massive question that's been burning like in my mind since we are trying to arrange this one. You somehow you said that you were nervous and self-conscious. I'm going to bring that up. You said you were nervous and self-conscious to have a chat with me. And I hate to make people feel, nervous and self-conscious. Is it a me? Is it a conversation? What's the thing? Tell me so I can make it better.
Not a you thing. It's not a you thing. It is 100% no, because you know that I love chatting with you. I mean, we've done it before, but this one is, like the framing of this is like, oh, I'm chatting with like these really awesome people. And I'm like, how the hell am I on that list? Because I'm really, that's the part that makes me nervous. And I don't like, oh my gosh, I hate, I don't know. I don't want to come across as like, like falsely modest or whatever, but it's part of actually, okay, so I'm just going to be like really brutally honest about this part because it is part of like having ADHD. Of like, the thing is that like people think that ADHD is about, oh, I forgot my keys, oh, I forgot where I put my phones, blah, blah, blah. Like that's the general mental image for the average person about ADHD. But in reality, a huge part of ADHD is that because of certain chemical imbalances, dopamine, and so on and so forth, what have you, it is very hard for people to register and remember things that we have done, like things that we have completed. And that has been such a huge part of my life. And I was diagnosed late in life with ADHD. I was diagnosed like when I was 29 or 30, right? So it's like relatively recent. And and that really just shifted my view of like, oh, this is why that is. So yeah, anyway, so people don't really realize that for a lot of people with ADHD, we do not actually hold on to the memories of our accomplishments or having achieved anything or having even just finished anything. Like as you said, like I'm also an artist and I do work on comics, for instance, and I catch myself on the daily telling myself like, yeah, you've never finished a comic before. I have a whole portfolio of like finished short comics for anthologies, for whatnot. Like I have at least 3 published comics, 2 in anthologies and 1 self-published by the writer of the comic because I was only the artist for that one. And I have like a handful of like very short like gags, so to speak. And I'm like, and yet every single day I catch myself like, I have never done anything. And so that is also very true for my work, where I'm like, oh, but I've never really done anything. And like, yet people come to me and like, oh yeah, I recognize your name. And then, oh yeah, I heard about you from so-and-so. And oh yeah, you're an amazing person. You're doing amazing work. And I'm like, what do you mean? So that's the brutally honest answer to that. That's what makes me self-conscious. And I know that it's an issue, but it's very hard to balance that thing. It's very hard to balance it out. So like for me, it's not about like modesty or whatever. It's not about being humble. It's just literally my brain chemistry is such that I have to write down on a piece of paper. Like I stole an idea from somebody I saw online, and I cannot give credit for this because I already forgot who it was, and I'm very, very sorry. But I'm also pretty sure that a lot of people do this. I literally have a little folder on my Google Drive that is just labeled win bin. And anytime anybody says something nice about my work, like how it helped them or how they appreciated me saying this or that, I take a screenshot and I put it in there. Because I'm like, I do not remember this. Like, I literally will not have a memory of this. But on a rainy day, if I remember that the win bin exists, because that's also an issue sometimes, then I go in there and I read it through and I'm just like, aw, you know? So anyway, that's where that comes from, at least partially.
Okay. Well, good. I'm so, so happy that you got that, because I was thinking, like, as you're talking, it sounds like your brain is like a liar by omission, but you're like a truth teller in your heart. So it's kind of really funny. Like, I'm like, how is that working out, that relationship between you and the brain? But I think then, yeah, you got that whole, that win bin. I love it. That's a great concept. I'm gonna have to take that. I have
Yes,
my running to-do list, and this is something where like I don't erase things once they're done. I kind of just keep it on like the list of all the checked things and such, like the things that I've done. And so it's a nice thing to look back on your day. You're like, man, I didn't get anything done. It's horrible. And then you look, actually, I got like these 10 things, maybe
yeah,
didn't get all 20, but like
yeah,
I got 10 stuff, 10 things done. And that's just
exactly,
keep track of the progress. It makes you feel better in the
exactly.
day?
Exactly. Next level thing is like whenever I do something that was not originally on my list, I put it on the list and then I cross it off.
Yo, I do that.
Meh, meh.
And that's the thing. It's like, you know what? I spend so much time with productive procrastination. I love it. So like I am a very productive procrastinator. So I have like
Mm,
things that absolutely need to get done. I have some things that are important but not urgent. I got some things that are like some things I should probably take care of eventually down the road. And if you get stuck on something that is, maybe a big thing that you need to get done, but you just don't have it, and you don't have the gas right now, just kind of go down the list. You're like, oh, you know what? I do need to also do da 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 da. And then I productively procrastinate. I may not make progress on that one thing initially, but it will get done in time. But like taking care of those other things a little bit by bit, when I should have been working on something else, means that when the time comes for that to have been the urgent, important thing to look at, it's already half done or completed
yep,
already. So
yep,
it
yep.
works out in its own dysfunctional way. I love it.
Exactly. The universe and the dysfunctional brain, it has a way. It's okay. Like trust the process. A lot of it is about trusting the process.
This is true. This is true. You know what, and adapting the process to make it work for you, I think that's been a big thing.
Yeah.
It it has occurred to me that maybe I am not a good like 9 to 5er, you know? And there's a certain point in my life where you just have to kind of accept that, where you're like, well, it's not worth all the discomfort of fitting myself into like a mold that doesn't quite fit?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and can you create more value for yourself and for others by just being who you are and how you are? And that's the thing. I think, I don't know, for me, that's something that I've come to realize. Like I always will have something that's a bit entrepreneurial in me. I'm always going to have something that is, out of the box in some ways, and that's kind of how it goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I hear that so much because I became self-employed last summer, right? And it was the
Mm.
scariest thing I've ever done. But at the same time, now a year in, I mean, I don't get me wrong, I don't exactly have stability, but I do have the luxury of having a partner who also has a job. It's not paying well by any means, but I do have that sort of luxury. So like we are
Yeah.
two people putting into the household, and we do have again the luxury to be renting quite cheap in Copenhagen, which is an
Yeah.
exceptionally lucky situation, because Copenhagen is an absolute nightmare to be renting in. But we got very lucky there, and I have like these luxuries. So all I'm trying to say is like having become self-employed was extremely scary, but I would not go back, and I hope that I never have to. Like exactly that. It's like I'm making my own mold, and I know that I need that structure, but I can create that structure, you
Well,
know?
that's the thing. I actually did this weird thing. I'm an analyst to my heart. Like this is something where I always like I will have some numbers behind almost every decision I make, right? And this past, I don't know, like for my birthday in February, I ended up like making a list of all the things that I valued. Like, these are the things that are really, really important to me. And from a professional context, these are things that are incredibly important to me. And I was looking at all the things that I do professionally, all the different activities that I do, things that I could do, like the jobs that I've had and that sort of thing. And then I started, scoring these based off of those values and what I need professionally in that sense. And, it occurred to me like, there are certain things that I could do, like that would give me more in my life. And this is why I'm actually
Mm-hmm.
doing this kind of series where I get to talk to different people and share and communicate. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I value. I value connecting with people, and I value sharing and education. And I'm thinking about a way that I can do it that's sustainable and a way that, has residual value in that sense. There's something where you can go back to this again at some point, right? Um, but
Yeah.
I was thinking about working in house. Can that give me what I want? And I realized it could. It actually could. So I'm a person where it can be something that could work if the work is flexible, and if the people add more than what they detract from my
Mm-hmm.
life.
Yeah.
But when you're in work dynamics where the people might be a little bit toxic in that sense, or if you're not valued for what you put in and that sort of thing, then it's not even worth it for me. But I've definitely looked for in-house roles just because I miss camaraderie sometimes, and that's the
Yeah.
thing where like when you work as a freelancer, when you work as an entrepreneur, when you work as somebody who is external, you sometimes don't get to build those long-term relationships with people.
Yeah.
And there's so much growth that you get when you can collaborate. There's so much growth that you can get when you actually do have that, that that companionship professionally.
Yeah.
So I do miss that, which is why I will always kind of look back in house in some ways. But it's a thing where when I realize the in-house thing doesn't give me what I want, I will switch back out externally to refill myself to make certain that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if I can't get it out there, I can always add, what I need to my own life. And I think I love that agency. I love the ability to do that. I'm so grateful I have that
Yeah.
option for myself.
Yeah, yeah, and I hear exactly what you're saying. What you're saying there, because, like not halfway. What am I saying? A couple of months into this whole self-employed journey, I started to be like, I really miss being in an office. I really miss being around people. They don't have
Mm-hmm.
to be my friends. Um, so like before my last job, right, I made this decision because I had like a bad experience at a past job. And I was like, I don't need to be friends with my colleagues. It's okay if we are work friends, so to speak. I go to work, we are civil, we are cordial, we are kind to one another, we have honest conversations and stuff, but we don't need to be friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I made that decision. Some of my best friends today are literally out of the job that I got after I made that decision. And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's the same as when I decided that I don't need to have a romantic partner to be happy. It's fine. And then I met my partner like 2 months later, and I'm still, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, right?
Oh
And I
my
was just like,
goodness!
why does this happen always like this?
Eh, Well, I mean,
Yeah, so it's wonderful.
you take out necessity and then you get the opportunity
Yeah.
of it. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Exactly, exactly. But what that also made me think of is that, like, as a self-employed person within this space, so DEI, I'm increasingly looking at DEI as a tool rather than a general area in which I work. I'm slowly shifting towards like more organizational design, social impact, and the links between the two, because
Mm-hmm.
toxic teams are not going to change the world for the better, period. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm kind of like shifting more and more towards that. But within this general space, meaning DEI, meaning social impact, meaning, a lot of the decolonial space, a lot of just kind of like these transformational things that are happening. A lot of people who I have made connections within that space, including you and including, so many other wonderful people. To me, like, it has been such a wonderful, enriching experience that the word competitor doesn't make sense to me anymore, especially in this space. And so that's what came up while you were also talking about, like, the camaraderie that we do miss as self-employed people. At the same time, I do make sure to, it's not, I'm not making sure anything. It's just happened organically. I see a lot of the people in this space as my colleagues. I don't see them as competitors. I see them as my colleagues. I see you as my colleague, right? Like, we're not competitors, even though we are both researchers within this space and we work like with vaguely similar things, but we don't really, because we have complementary skill sets. And I have like everybody within this space, we all have complementary skill sets. And the thing is that the issues are so big, so entrenched, so deeply rooted, that we need everybody that is able to work on this to be working on this. There is no room for competition. And so for me, when people are like, I want to be the leading DEI thought leader, blah blah blah, and I'm like, you make no sense to me. I'm so sorry, this makes zero sense to me. Because why do you think, I don't care who you are, but why do you think that you as a single person can be the key to most or all DEI challenges? That goes against the grain of DEI, straight up.
I always think about this. So when it comes to this notion of inclusion, I'm like, why are you working by yourself in that sense? Like, so for me, I always have collaborators that I work with different kind of projects. And so I like to bring them in. And by the way, at some point, we're going to be collaborating on something. We got to work on something, right? And it's because, but it's this thing, because of this research and mindset, you always have triangulation, right? And you want to take a look at different things from different perspectives, right? So it's not just, the triangulation of data, you also have triangulation of perspective, right? And so for me, I always want to make certain that I'm bringing in people who have different perspectives than what I have. Otherwise, you can get caught in this whole thing of, just the observer bias. You can get this whole thing of just, bringing in your perspective that you think, and that's the one thing, but that's completely against this idea of diversity, and it's a completely against this idea of inclusion. So how do we make certain that we're always bringing in different perspectives, different viewpoints, and different people to be able to look at these things and be able to solve these problems together? Because you can't solve problems for people without people,
That's the whole thing, right? Like, and that's also so interesting, because when I enter, like, I have a couple of like very, very unpopular things that I ask of, like, founders within social impact spaces, where I'm like, are you really the right person to be tackling this problem? And that's a very unpopular unpopular question. And you know what? In some ways, I do blame the hero's journey sort of Western storytelling tradition. I do, because we all want to be the Luke Skywalkers, right? We all want to be that one hero that saves the day, and there is no such thing. There is no one person who invents a thing. No one person invents a thing. Like, standing on the shoulders of giants or whatever, that is not just a turn up phrase. Like, and it's not just, you're not just building on knowledge that was accumulated 100 years before you. You are also building on knowledge that is being accumulated actively as you're also working on your own thing. You have to, because otherwise, whatever you come up with is just not it's just not relevant in the present moment anymore. So you have to be building on stuff that other people are working on. And if you're building on that competitively, then it's all about stepping over other people, while you don't really notice that you're stepping over people, because we are all so indoctrinated with this whole hero's journey bullcrap, right? Like, that is like, oh, there is the one person who's going to save the day. And yeah, that person does have sidekicks, but it's still, it very much promotes this like weird hierarchy of like, there is the one savior on top. And we have that ingrained in us so deeply, like, not just through like the systemic, the structural, the political, the organizational of our society, but our narratives and our stories that come out of this space reflect that mindset. And it doesn't only reflect, it also perpetuates that mindset. And I think that that's this might seem like a massive tangent, but I think that that's also why it's so extremely important to read stories from outside of our own cultural bubble that we grew up in, because suddenly you will just experience other story structures, other storylines, like you will be exposed to things that are completely different from that narrative tradition that you are so deeply entrenched in. And I know that to some people these things might seem extremely far removed, but to me they're like really in overlap. But then again, like I'm the worst of systems thinkers, that I'm like I cannot
no.
tug on one thing without everything else moving with it. So
I
but yeah.
appreciate this. I honestly appreciate this, but I was smiling because I was thinking, I love how you bring in storytelling into so many different things. And this is a great thing. This is perfect. And it also reminded me, though, of, so we've had very different experiences in our lives and such, but we have very similar kind of interest journeys, I would say. I mean, I think, do we both start off in linguistics and such? I
Yep.
mean, exactly. And so we started off with linguistics, and then we kind of go into research and, DEI, organizational development, and systems thing.
Yep.
So it's kind of funny. And then when the storytelling aspect, I was like, this is, I hear that in there. So I love that you're weaving all of these things throughout what you do. I mean, I'm really curious, is there any one of those strings, those threads in your professional life that you're like, I really wish I could try to, to weave back in there, weave there a bit more often? Because you do so many different things. And I'm wondering, like, is there something where you're like, I wish we could do this more, I could integrate this more to be able to build the solutions I'm looking to help build in the world?
So the thing is that I have a very, very hard time accepting that I am one person with the finite resources of being one person in space and in time.
So
And
hard.
I know what's the deal with that. And so anytime I'm doing something, I miss everything else that I'm not doing at that same time. And so like, if you ask me like any given week, I will give you a different answer to this. But right now, currently, I really wish that I could bring in a bit more of sort of like the visual art style of what I do. But at the same time, like, again, the limitations of being one person within time and space, it makes it really hard. And then again, like, I literally just talked about the whole hero's journey, and like no one person will solve anything. So it's a little bit. So I have to balance that wish of like being able to do everything that I'm interested in, with the other side of that same coin of being the person solving XYZ problem. Like I don't want to accidentally fall over into that. So and to me, the line between those two things is a little bit too thin. So I'm trying my best to just kind of balance that out. But basically, yeah, the drawing part, I wish that I could just draw like little educational comics, and I have actually done that, for money within my own like self-employed life this year, which was like really wild. I did
Check
not
that win
expect that to
then.
happen.
Seriously.
I know, it was awesome. And so like I want to do that, but I will say this: drawing comics is extremely time consuming. It is so time consuming that by the time I'm done with like a project, with like a short educational comic or whatever, it might just not be relevant anymore. The same way that it was when I started it. Even if it's just a couple of days, even if it's just a couple of weeks, right? And most of the time it's a couple of months, because I'm also studying. Like I'm also doing a master's degree next to everything else I'm doing, and it's part time and it's remote and stuff, but it's still work. So I'm just kind of like, it's a lot. I wish I could draw more, but I'm fine not doing that, and I'm fine using that passion on something else on the side in my free time right now. Because like also kind of like tying everything that I do for passion, like tying everything that I love doing into sort of like a revenue stream or a revenue source, and just seeing it like that is also depressing as heck. And I also don't want to fall into that trap, right? So yeah, that's my very long answer to that.
No, but actually, this is very interesting, because I was thinking about this with a lot of people who are also like, they do this/this/this, and a lot of these are passions that they have. And there is sometimes this question I have, like, as to, does every passion have to be your profession? Does everything that you do have to be something that gives you money in some ways? I'm from Detroit, and everybody, I would say, most people that I know there are like hustlers in some way. So like they always have like a side job. Their passion is another job, like, so they might work in the factories, they might work, in some actual day job, but in their spare time, what are they doing? They're musicians, they are artists, they are, singers, they are doing various kind of things, rappers and such. And that's a whole career. That's actually someone's actual job,
Yeah.
But it's a weird thing when your passion is also the thing that puts, the food on the table and such. It
Yeah.
has a whole different dynamic to it. Then you start looking at it from a different way. Like I see this from content creators all the time who are like, I started off making content for myself, but then when you want to do it for money, then it becomes a thing where you have to start thinking, how do you make this for those other people? And how do you make certain that you
Mm-hmm.
optimize these things and get that, get the message out, which may not have
Yep.
been the message you wanted to put out, but, it's that weird adjustment of, when you're doing something for yourself versus when you're doing something for others.
Yep. Yeah.
And it can take a lot of that, it can tap a lot of the joy out of it in some ways, if that's not what you
Yeah.
intended to do.
Yeah. Imagine all the cool stuff that people would create and also collaborate on and build houses, roads, whatever infrastructure we need, take care of one another. If cost of living as a thing was not a thing, right? Like, is this the part where I plug the general idea of UBI? I don't know.
Universe,
Every single
yeah.
conversation with me just like comes back to that.